Okay, so okay, the recording is on. So welcome everyone. My name is Vishnu Pendyala. I am the chair of the IEEE Computational Intelligence Society Santa Clara Valley chapter. Today we have the privilege of Asking Me Anything session with Professor Alice E. Smith. She is a IEEE CIS distinguished lecturer. So a little bit about Dr. Alice Smith. She is the Joe W. Forehand Junior Distinguished Professor, Industrial and Systems Engineering at Auburn University. She was elected to the National Academy of Engineering in 2025. She is the Fellow of IEEE, Informs, and IISE. Like I mentioned earlier, she is a distinguished lecturer with the Computational Intelligence Society. She's also an official speaker for Informs. She's renowned for research in computationally inspired optimization, operations research, and complex system modeling. So she is the author of highly cited papers and books, including Women in Computational Intelligence and Women in Industrial Systems Engineering. She has over 18,000 citations. Her H index is 53, and she is among the top 2% of the scientists globally, as per the ranking that Stanford provides every year. She's the editor-in-chief for Inform's Journal on Computing. She is the area editor for Computers and Operations Research. She is a principal investigator on 12 million plus in funded research from the funding is from NASA, NSF, DoD, DHS, and all the prominent organizations. She is a four-time Fulbright scholar in Turkey, Chile, and Colombia. And in terms of leadership, she was chair of the IISE department from 1999 to 2011. As a chair, she led major expansion in research, enrollment, and diversity. She is the past president of Inform's chairs of Operations Research Department, chair council of ISE academic department heads, and recipient of Inform's WARMS Award, Holzman Distinguished Educator Award, and Wellington Award. She continues to inspire future generations of engineers and researchers worldwide. Named a Yellowhammer Woman of Impact in 2020 and a DEI ambassador in 2021. So without much ado, let's get started. So 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 we'll explore how Professor Smith's ideas have evolved, how they connect to emerging technologies, and what lies ahead at the intersection of AI and engineering. So the theme is mostly on optimization, artificial intelligence, and the human element. So let's begin by looking back at where it all started. So Professor Smith, your early work on genetic algorithms and reliability engineering really shaped the field. So what core ideas from those early projects still guide your research today?
Well, that's a great question, Vishnu. And by the way, I'm really happy to be here. It's later than where I am, so I'm at home. Just so you know, any of you listening are welcome to reach out to me by email in the future if you ever want to make a connection. And I'm really glad you're all participating in IEEE. It's a wonderful organization. I've been a member since 1988 or 89 or 87. I don't remember. Anyways, a long time. So in terms of my work, my earlier work, being helpful to me. So I think mine really focus on solving problems that relate well to real problems that have a translation, either directly or almost directly into practice. I'm not a theoretician. I'm more of a kind of algorithm and builder and data mining person to do modeling and optimization of complex systems, where the complex system could be almost anything, including the reliability design you alluded to, but that has a practical problem, that's some kind of design or improvement problem. And I think so. I look for pragmatism. Is this something worth studying? If so, are we going to solve it in a way that is practical to implement in terms of computationally, in terms of what's needed on the part of the user, how much sophistication is needed? In the earlier days, there was, of course, more concerned about computing power and ubiquitous computing power existing where it was needed and the speeds. This is less of a concern now, so we have a lot more freedom to be more elaborate, more computationally heavy in our approaches if we need to. But I always like to start simple. The best designs are simple. So if you think of something like a needle, you can't improve upon a needle. We've been using needles as humankind for tens of thousands of years. So of course, I'm not going to discover a needle, but I think it's a good lesson to say, let's start with the simplest way, and then we'll build on complexity and complications if needed. So I think that's important. The other thing that I think I learned is that to publish in the good mainstream journals so the work gets noticed. So when we did this work, my paper that's highly cited in terms of the reliability design with the genetic algorithms and IEEE transactions on reliability, that actually started out of a student problem in the class. And I was working with the student, a PhD student at the time, and I knew this work was going to be really important. I mean, and I hope that doesn't sound too egotistical, but it was like, this is new. This is, we're having really good results. This is exciting to bring this to the field. So, I knew we need to publish in the IEEE journal because it's going to get the attention of people in the field and really reach everyone. So I think it's really important to make sure your publication is as strong as you can make it, and that it goes in the place to reach the maximum amount of the kind of people you want to reach.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you have long emphasized maintaining diversity in optimization solutions. So how has that philosophy evolved now that systems change so rapidly in real time?
So one thing that I've worked on, not because I was intending to, but because I needed to, was multi-objective optimization. Because very few things in real life just have a single objective. And even among single objectives, you can't capture everything with fidelity when you do the translation from real life to whatever abstraction, your math model, your algorithm. And so I think it's important to give a group of very, very good possibilities for the system you're trying to optimize. And it helps if they're dissimilar, because then you can see the different possibilities across a wide spectrum and react to them. So I think decision makers have a very hard time articulating preferences and making choices when they don't know exactly what those choices are going to be. It's much easier to choose from a set. So, for example, if you go out to eat at a restaurant, you look at a menu and you're like, you can narrow it down pretty quickly, probably. And there's 3 or 4 items you like. So you ask maybe the waiter about more about each, and then you make a final decision. But what if you went in and there was no menu? And the waiter comes and says, what do you want to eat? I mean, it's sometimes, I mean, I don't know. What do you make? What's available? I mean, it's just making a choice a priori is very hard for humans to do on anything. And that's why it's important, I think, to offer decision makers involvement in the process, even at the end, which is, these are really good here. And if you pick any of them, they'll be good solutions, but they might be as different as a plate of spaghetti versus some broiled fish. So it just depends on what meets your needs. So that's kind of just a little silly analogy, but it is important, and it's not easy, but it's one of the strengths of using many of the techniques in computational intelligence, namely in swarm intelligence and evolutionary computation, is their population-based techniques. So you kind of, as a byproduct, you can get this sometimes diverse, sometimes you have to work at that, but a set of really good possibilities. And so that's, I think, one the reason this field has blossomed, not only in research, but in practice.
Yeah, I fully agree with that statement. So many of your models handle uncertainty. So how do you see machine learning helping optimization adapt when data is incomplete or evolving?
Yeah, that's a challenging problem when the environment's changing, the data's uncertain. And I've done some work in that area. We still have active work going on because it is, as you said, it's evolving. Um, Again, you have to look at are the priorities, are the constraints, are the targets, the goals, are they evolving? What does the search space look like as it's morphing in real time? And of course, you have to be very cognizant of computational effort. So if you're trying to optimize something in near real time, you need something that's super quick, but is dependable. So those are difficult things to achieve. I personally have found success with this particle swarm algorithm. It reacts very well to changing environments, and it's very quick. So I've used that for some things. I've also used deep learning, where you're doing pre-processing and post-processing, but in between you've got a mechanism that can recognize changes and respond to them in almost real time. But it's hard to handle changing environments in terms of uncertainty. So another kind of aspect is, what if your objective function, for example, is a random variable? Do you simulate it? I've done that before, where you have to simulate it. If so, how much effort should you spend? You want to spend more on promising search directions and solutions than those that are less. So you have to throw things out. You can do things like bounding. So if something's within a certain bound, I take one action. If not, I take another to be able to properly use the computational effort according to how much certainty you need. So, but I don't have any magic answers. I still am like, oh, these are hard. They are hard. And you have to work at things to get them to respond properly. You also need, if you're doing modeling, to be able to recognize when you don't know something. So when you're building, say, a deep learning model, and you're trained it on a domain, and all of a sudden your domain is shifted, you have to, as a user, understand that this model isn't valid. It needs plasticity to be able to move over into this changing environment.
Yeah, thanks for that perspective. So that kind of gives us a sense of the foundation. So now let's move into the methods that drive your current research. So you have worked across the spectrum from precise deterministic algorithms to soft computing and hybrid approaches. How do you think about the trade-off between the precision of MILP models and the adaptability of soft computing techniques? Uh,
Uh,
yeah, you may also want to briefly explain what MILP models mean to our
okay.
viewers.
Well, that's where I've made my career, Vishnu, right? Because I kind of, on one hand, mixed integer linear programming models are traditional out of math programming. And there's a lot of different math programming models. That's part of the foundations of part of the field that I'm in, which is operations research and applied mathematics. So those are very traditional optimizers. When I got my PhD, I will age myself. I graduated in 1991. My dissertation was on neural networks, on deep learning for process control. And it was one of the very early ones that did that. So I kind of been in the field, well, for, I guess more than 30 years. But really, for most of that time, even now, traditional people in optimization, they look down on us. They don't regard our approaches as being, equal, because they're, you can't theoretically prove optimality a lot. They don't have elegant math typically, but you know what? They work. And with computational abilities have gotten so commonplace now that they're perfect for what we need to solve, because you can model complicated things much more easily. They don't have to fit a certain structure. They don't have to go out and think for 8 hours before. You can turn them off at any time if you're doing some kind of iteration that if you have to terminate early, that's fine. You're going to have most of the improvement already done. So it's been something that has been hard to have a legitimate career, but it's much easier now than it was. But we've also found that often if you combine them, so some of my work has, for example, a meta-heuristic on the top level, and there'll be subordinate calls to things like a mixed integer nonlinear or linear program, or some other kind of conventional optimization or algorithm. And these can work very nicely together. The idea is if you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But if you know, and this is, I teach this stuff, if you know different approaches, different meta heuristics, for example, along with the traditional ways to optimize, and not just this, but something like a Newton's method or something like that, a response surface method, then you can fit the tool to the form. And when I work with newer researchers, especially my students, a lot of times they'll come in, we'll be trying to solve whatever problem we're trying to solve. And they're like, well, I'm going to use a genetic algorithm for this. And I'm like, how should I encode, what do you think the crossover should look like? And I said, I will tell them, I don't want to even hear about solution methodology. I don't even want to hear about it. First, we've got to model the problem. Once we see the model of the problem, then we're going to fit the approach to the problem. We're not going to try to fit the problem to the approach. And so I think it's really important to know your toolbox, or to work with someone who knows their toolbox, so that they can truly craft a solution that is most appropriate.
Yeah, that's a good strategy, I think. So one other question is, so reinforcement learning is now the vogue, right? Every
One
most
of the vogues.
Yeah, one of the vogues. That's right. Thanks for correcting. So could reinforcement learning serve as a heuristic or partner to make MILP models more flexible under uncertainty? Do you think so?
Yes, I mean, there's active work, quite a bit of active work going on in that area. It's not work that I'm doing, because I specialize more in heuristics. But yes, and I think reinforcement learning can be used, and other types of machine learning. I mean, there's not just reinforcement, can be used in concert with many either traditional or emerging techniques. But you also have to be sure you've got data. So a lot of people get really excited about, data-driven models and so on, but they're only as good as the data. So one thing that, again, to look at is the preliminaries. Do you have a good stream of data? Is it valid? Is it going to cover the range you need to cover? And a lot of people, they just kind of want to get to the quote exciting part, the spicy part, which is the algorithm, but you really have to do your homework first on the data to make sure what you're intending to do has that to support it. Otherwise, you can do it, but the result's not going to be robust, and that means it's probably not going to be very useful.
Yeah, that's right. So in your studies on sustainable system design, you compared evolutionary and heuristic methods. So do you see potential in merging evolutionary optimization with decentralized or federated learning approaches?
Yes, I think intelligent optimization can be applied to almost anything, and in fact often should be. I do not work with federated learning. My work in sustainability has been done mainly in looking at improving systems that are sustainable. For example, particularly in transportation and logistics. But I think that these methods of optimization can be extremely powerful, and they're very flexible, which is probably their most important way. So I think they could definitely be part of any system that needs that flexibility and robustness and power, because they're pretty robust too. they don't tend to break really badly if they're not doing super well, they still do pretty well. They're not like badly suboptimal. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
Yeah, it kind of answers the question. And speaking of adaptation and scale, one of the most exciting areas of your work involves drones and logistic systems. So let's turn there next. Um, so your research on truck drone delivery and logistic optimization tackles real-world complexity head-on. So how can these frameworks adapt to sudden disruptions, like so things like drone failures, bad weather, or last-minute routing changes?
okay, so that's great. We actually have a current project dealing with that, which are disruptions, exactly what you said. Because most of the literature using drones in logistics assume perfect conditions, which of course we know. Maybe it's always perfect in California, but the rest of the world not always perfect. So what we're doing is we're looking at what's called recourse planning. So you plan like it will be perfect, but then you either forecast or react depending on the model you get. We're doing both, that disruptions occur. We're concentrating more on weather disruptions rather than drone failures. That's kind of a catastrophic failure where things need to be replanned. And so there's this kind of iterative process that as things happen, you're replanning for the disruption, and then after the disruption passes, which means you're re-optimizing, okay? So, but it's not, of course, from the beginning, it's you're already got things in place. So computationally, that has to be done quickly. If you think about it, you've got to react quickly. So one of my published works, this isn't on the bad weather, but where we were taking orders in stochastically, so randomly, for example, medicines or something that need that want same day delivery. Well, at the same time, you've got the truck and the drone out. So what the decision makers have to do in that case, or the automated system, is when the order comes in, they need to be told, is it going to be delivered the same day or the next day? And so, and this might be coming in, say if the workday is 8 to 5, this might be coming in at 2 in the afternoon. So we developed a combination of meta heuristics and kind of greedy heuristics to optimize things very quickly in that case, to be able to replan. But in weather, it's also true. You need to replan quickly. In terms of drone failures, if a drone fails catastrophically, it's out of commission for whatever. And that's like any other reliable system where you have a catastrophic failure of a component. You have to either have redundancy, right? So you might have other drones, or you've got to have an alternative method to accomplish things, or you'd have to take a penalty for not accomplishing things. If they fail gradually, so let's say it's more of a degradation, then you might have the fact, okay, now this drone can't go as fast, or this drone can't carry as much, or this drone can only make 2 more flights and then it's done for the day, rather than the 5 that were intended. So whatever that means, it also means you've got recourse planning, and also redundancy can help, but then redundancy costs money. So then again, if it goes back to decision making in terms of what is the value having redundancy versus the cost. And these are a lot of the trade-offs that we look at, is the value of a system design at various levels of performance versus cost, whether cost is time, money, people, or some combination of that.
Okay, and so what's the hardest part about moving from offline optimization to real-time adaptive control for mixed human drone fleets?
For real-time computational speed, super important. And that can be very difficult. You have to be satisfied with kind of approximate answers. You have to be very cognizant of things in real time or near real time. I don't think nothing I've done has been actual real time. And you have to design your algorithms accordingly. I think you have to have some kind of fallback positions, plan Bs, for when things don't go as planned. So what if you lose contact with the drone? So you have to have some kind of autonomous behavior within the drone to try to reestablish contact. For example, what if a drone drops out of the sky and needs to be, we call it rescued? You've got to be able to react to that in an expedient way and redirect resources so that happens. So I think it has a lot of challenges. It can have challenges in sensors and navigation, which aren't really my specialty, but in terms of algorithmic, it definitely has implementation constraints. You become very constrained in what you're able to do as a system optimizer when you're dealing with a near real-time system, which I think, fortunately, I think a lot of the meta heuristics can do very, very well with that. But you have to be purposeful in how you use them.
Yeah, speaking of alternatives, as these networks grow, do you see distributed or federated optimization as a way to ease the computational and communication load?
Possibly. I mean, honestly, I'm a little skeptical of the whole, excitement of federated distribution and learning. And it's probably because I don't know enough about it, but I'm still not a true believer that it will work as smoothly as the proponents say. Just because when you put systems together, you have communication systems, you have people systems, you have computing systems, and sharing things, it just seems like things become more complicated than expected. And when systems like that fail or degrade, then you get a lot of disruptions. I mean, that affect many people. I mean, it's like, if you're dealing with an interconnected system, you kind of live and die by that. In terms of distributed computing, I think there's all possibilities. Again, you've got to consider the communications and the possible disruption. I don't work in cybersecurity, but that is a huge question also. And that there's bad actors out there. So again, it's not my specialty area, but I view it with a little bit of skepticism right now.
Yeah, that's reasonable. So we covered a fascinating mix of control, learning, and logistics. But one thread that consistently runs through your research is the role of people in these systems. You often highlight the importance of human decision parameters or factors in optimization. So, where do you see human in the loop optimization heading? Could algorithms someday learn not just human constraints, but also our strategies and preferences?
Definitely. And in fact, that's where a lot of my research is aimed at. I do think we need more human in the loops. I think systems with optimization and modeling. And I think we need to involve humans more with it, not just make it a black box saying, okay, here it is. Because that is going to engender the usability and the trust. This is a big thing is trust in what the computer, or the system is generating. I think that humans, again, go back to humans have difficulty fully articulating preferences and even articulating some of the things that need to be considered in a complicated system. It's hard to think of everything and to specify that. And so there's always going to be a human touch. There's also humans bring with them their own knowledge, their biases, their own set of, well, I like this, but I don't like that so much. So to the extent that systems can leverage that beneficially, automated systems, I think that's good. We've worked with a number of projects. We're just finished one that the ultimate user is the Air Force, and it's for large scale wargaming, with sorties and flights and all of that stuff. And it's very important to have the human in the loop in these optimizations, because these are trained officers, Air Force officers, and they're trying to simulate under battlefield conditions, under adverse conditions, the type of decision making they would make, the best type in real practice. So we have the system interact with them in terms of, for example, their attitude towards risk. Because obviously if you're in a battlefield situation, there's a lot of risk involved because there's all sorts of dangers. And that's very changeable over time. So I think it's really important. I also think what you brought up is, can machine learning, can AI start to learn this? Yes, I believe it can. It can learn both in general about human behavior, but probably used more often for specific. So this type of decision maker, or this individual, they have these preferences. And so where we want to present things in our optimization that move in this direction. So yes, I do think that these systems can learn. I think that some of the things we develop, for example, in the deep learning, that we can meld a data-driven approach with a human expertise approach. And so you're bringing both together to harness the power of both to make the resulting system even stronger. But, again, it's not that simple. I've worked with eliciting human knowledge in some of my work to try to build that in, for example, in a fuzzy reasoning system, to try to replicate human expertise. And we did have success with it, but it's difficult to get humans to properly structure their expertise and to do it in a way that without bias. But it's fun. It's a fun challenge. And I think that's where a lot of the future's going to be. I think as we get into is computers trustworthy? Trustworthy AI is querying the system. Why are you recommending that? You know, what are the uncertainties within this choice of design or decision or whatever that's coming out of your algorithm, and have human users query that and have some kind of reasonable response. So explainable AI is something that several of my students are working on. So we're working on looking at data mining kinds of things to inform decisions. But we also want to be very cognizant about the human and be able to, quote, defend decisions and predictions by using something that's can provide a rational explanation to a human or human-like user.
Yeah, yeah, mechanistic interpretability and explainability are really gaining ground these days.
As they should.
Yeah, they should. I agree with that. So let us switch to healthcare a little bit. So in healthcare layout design, you have modeled staff and patient movements. So could digital twins or agent-based simulations help capture realistic behaviors to improve infection control, for instance?
Yes, and in fact, there's already been quite a bit of work done in that. Maybe not so much in the digital twin, but definitely in agent-based modeling. There's been a fair amount of work done in the healthcare and social networks also. Yeah, healthcare is a field where computational intelligence is already a big player, and I think it's just going to become everywhere, really, in terms of helping improve systems outcomes, improve system efficiencies, have a more patient-centric and tailored experience. It's not my main field. I dabble in it a little bit. My daughter works in healthcare. And so that's how we kind of got involved with that project through her company she works for. And it's easy to see that healthcare needs us. But then of course, that's also part of the explainable AI, because in healthcare, you know, you're not going to go to a doctor who says, well, my computer here, because they all have computers now with them, tells me that you need to have this kind of operation. And if you're a patient, you're like, well, explain why. And the doctor can't say, well, I don't know. It came out. You have to really have a lot of transparency in what the algorithm's doing, and what it's recommending. You have, for example, you have intelligent algorithms reading mammograms. And I get a mammogram every year because that's what mature women do in the US. Well, AI involved in reading that is great, but you need users, including patients and healthcare providers, need to know for sure that this is a reliable, trustworthy decision when you're saying, okay, this looks like it's suspicious, or this one's not suspicious, it's fine. So with healthcare particularly, I think the whole idea of transparency, maybe not full transparency, but at least not opaqueness, is super important.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think that's where human in the loop also may be helpful.
Yes, yes, that's an excellent point.
Yeah. So let's now zoom in on, in the very few minutes that we have, let's zoom in on a few domain specific applications where some of these ideas really come alive. So in manufacturing and logistics, you have tested some fascinating hybrid systems. In your drone-enabled material handling research, for instance, how do routing patterns change when we move from human-only systems to human-drone hybrids?
Well, that's a good question. So one of the projects we're working on now, which is funded by the federal government, is to look at drones for material handling and production environments. And of course, they offer speed up potential, but what they also offer is they can get to places very easily and naturally that are difficult for humans to get to, or takes more time, or it's more dangerous. They got to go up on a forklift or whatever. So one of the things that we're doing, we found, is not only are we improving material handling, but we also can think about new designs. So we can think about utilizing spaces, for example, higher up, that are underutilized currently with more human-centric designs. So it opens up possibilities beyond just efficiencies. It opens up a better use of facilities. There are also concerns on the negative side, which are safety concerns, and that's one of the things we're studying. So if we have drones whizzing above where workers are working, which is what are proposing, what if a drone falls down, or what if a drone accidentally runs into a worker? So these are, real concerns, and they need to be addressed. And we don't have full answers for that, but it's part of our studies, is to look at the safety. When we've looked at systems where the drones are called on to interact with people who are not trained, for example, let's just say the general public, this creates a lot of problems. And a lot of the drone logistics literature assumes, anyone in the general public would happily receive this drone and know how to get whatever they're getting out of it, and it would go on its way. But the realities are, a lot of people are not going to do that. They'll be afraid of the drone. They'll abuse the drone. I gave a talk one time on our work, and I think this was in the southern US, and one of the audience members said, and he was joking, of course, but he said, I would shoot the drone down, because, what is this? So actually we changed the way we approach things, not because technically it wouldn't work, it would, but what we changed is the drone would only deal with trained users, for example, at certain supply points, rather than the general public. So I think some of these things that are technically possible are not really very possible when you overlay the human systems, the society, and the cultural norms and the way we approach things. And they can also be somewhat societal dependent.
So, a technical curiosity for our audience. How do you typically gather and estimate enterprise data for these large-scale optimization models?
Depends. The best way is to have a partner that provides data. Because we like to work with real data. We also work with simulated data to do a lot of development work. But at the end of the day, we want to work with real problems. So getting partner data, getting case studies. I like case studies because they're fun And they prove the practical application, because I'm an engineer. I'm not a theoretician. I like to build things that are implementable and that solve real problems. But sometimes data is a problem. It seems like you either have too much or you don't have enough. There's never that happy medium. So sometimes we seek out data sources through partnering, and especially in other countries. So we're working right now on a project for improving port operations, seaports. And we had a good idea, but we didn't have data. So we reached out to someone who specializes in seaports around the world, but especially in Latin America. And we're partnering with them to get the data and also get the kind of the inside information on how things really work, because we can't be experts in all domains. And so you have to partner with a domain expert is best. When we do defense work, like I mentioned, the work with the Air Force, we also need data, but they don't give us real data, because we're not a classified project. So they give us, I don't know how they simulate it. Somehow they make it up. But presumably it looks like they're real data, at least in some format. So sometimes that occurs as well.
Okay, let us talk a little bit about AI sustainability and society. Your work often connects advanced algorithms to societal challenges. So, how do you see AI-driven optimization helping industries meet sustainability goals like energy efficiency or waste reduction?
Well, I think in most ways, because when you can truly optimize a system with fidelity and do it in a reasonable way, it can improve quality, it can improve efficiency, it can improve sustainability. So I think sustainability from an optimization perspective is just like any other objective or constraint. And it could be the sole objective or the main objective or a sideline. I don't see it as being its own special case from an optimization perspective. Some of the systems we optimize include a sustainability aspect, along with maybe an efficiency or time or cost or some other kind of aspect as well.
Yeah, we're almost on the top of our. So before we wrap up, let's look ahead to the future of optimization, AI, and the people driving it forward. So what open challenges at the intersection of AI, optimization, and human decision making excite you most right now?
Well, one thing that worries me is AI is a big topic right now. And having been in this field for over 30 years, I mean, AI is not magic. It's not even intelligent. I mean, let's be honest. And the AI has gone through boom and bust before, where there's been so much hype and then people get discouraged. So I think there's some challenges now that AI's on everyone's lips. Everyone's saying, oh, large language models, AI is going to do everything. Well, AI is not going to do everything. And it's not going to be appropriate for everything. And we need to scale back expectations and really be more judicious about what is it really good for versus, oh, it can take over the world and, either humans will be destroyed if you're a pessimist, or optimist, oh, we'll all have wonderful lives because of AI. Neither of those are going to pass. in my opinion. So I think that's a little concerning because some of the opportunities for funding and for getting students excited, they're really out there now, but what's going to happen in the future? Another issue that I see, and I don't work in large language models, but the environmental aspects of what's needed to keep them going, I think is a societal concern in terms of energy consumption and just resources in general. And, you know, at some point, I think hard decisions have to be made about that. But the exciting part, I think, so those are kind of my negative thoughts. On the positive part, it's a super fun field to be in. It's very creative. And what I tell my students is, hey, if it works, it's great. You don't have to prove a theorem. You don't have to, you know, have it be, oh, well, this is the way it's done. No, you can be creative. And if it doesn't work, then, oh, well, you've got to create something else. But if it works, then you've made a good discovery and it needs to be shared. And that's really cool. I also think the ideas we've already talked about with the human in the loop, the human as an important user in terms of trustworthiness, in terms of better transparency. I think this is very positive for computational intelligence. And some of this is overdue. So I think that there's definitely going to be in the future where every intelligence system we build is automatically got a degree, at least, of transparency, and that there's been more attention paid to being trustworthy and to the human aspect. So I think that's really positive. So I think it's an exciting field. I've loved being in it. It changes a lot, which I think is good. It makes it a little hard to keep up. Sometimes you can't specialize in everything. In fact, you can only specialize in a teeny bit of it and you have to carve out your niche. But it's fun, and I think it's wonderful that, you know, organizations in private industry and government have gotten excited about trying to leverage the opportunities that intelligence systems have. And there's just gained a lot more acceptance instead of skepticism and ridicule, which honestly used to occur a lot. And I want to make one more pitch because that's something I'm passionate. It's a great career for women. So it's a really open field. It's global. I've had so many wonderful interactions around the world through this field, through IEEE. And for both men and women, it's great. But I've been really proud of our women in this field and how much they have achieved. And I've always heard them say they've always felt welcomed in this field. And I think a lot of technical fields, you can't say that.
Yeah, those were really insightful words. Thank you, Professor Smith, and thank you to everyone joining us today. This has been an inspiring journey through decades of innovation, connecting rigorous optimization to the very human challenges of decision making and sustainability. So, once again, thanks a lot, Professor Smith, for giving us your time, valuable time. I know it's really late for you, so I'll not take any more of your.
It is a little late, but it's been a great joy. And I do invite anyone viewing this who has further things they'd like to discuss with me or interactions, just email me. I'm very responsive. And again, I am really pleased you guys are involved with IEEE CIS. It's a wonderful organization, and I encourage you to get more involved as the years go by, because you will meet really wonderful people, and both professionally and personally.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.